Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here, and today, well actually not today, but last night I was sitting down to record the original video I had planned on making for today. Now, in that original video, I was going to be going over a group of ships in the Tier 7 to Tier 8 range. And when I was sitting down to record the background footage, originally I was going to take out a couple of the Tier 8s, get a couple of matches in them, and then, sit down and record the audio for the video and such. However, when I sat down to record those matches, I thought, I read a comment last week on, I believe it was one of the top 5 videos, well, I should say in the last couple of weeks. And the comment was something along the lines of, "Hey, Sealord, you feature on this channel high tier so much, like Tier 8, Tier 9, and Tier 10 so much and so often. Why don't you go ahead and focus on some of the lower tier ships, mid-tier and below?" And I thought, you know what? That is true. Now, there is a reasoning behind that. And the simple fact is that that is simply where most of the player base plays, at high tier, from Tier 8 and above. I mean, naturally, in a game like Warships, where you have a tiered vehicle system, right? Most players are playing the game and grinding out XP and such to get to high tier. So, naturally, when they get there, they want to stay there. And, of course, that's where a lot of the big names are in Warships, right? So, because of that, I do mostly feature higher tier stuff on the channel, because that's what most of the player base is interested in. So, I thought, you know what? Let's go ahead and let's switch it up for this video. We'll take out some Tier 7 ships, get some games in them, get a couple of good matches for the background footage, and then go on and make the rest of the video. So I sat down in these Tier 7 ships, and rather than sitting there just to get footage like I normally find myself doing so much when playing higher tier ships, I actually started to experience something that is a hard concept for a lot of the player base to understand and grasp, and that is fun. The matches I was having at Tier 7 were much better in terms of the quality of the game, meaning that the matches were closer, both in terms of engagement range and, of course, in terms of who was winning at that particular moment. I was noticing that we were having quite a few less blowout matches at Tier 7 than what you normally have at Tier 8, 9, and 10, and the games were lasting quite a bit longer. Now, there's, of course, a couple of reasons going behind both of those two main points, but that's some of the, well, those are two of the biggest complaints that you hear about higher tier matches. Everything's so short now, and the matches are completely one-sided, which, I mean, yeah, right now, especially right now because it's patch week, there are no shortage of blowouts happening at Tier 8+, but I was finding myself at Tier 7 having a much better and a much more enjoyable time. Now, why is that, and why might you want to find yourself playing at Tier 7, hell, even Tier 6, more often now than you might be playing at the moment? Well, before I get into that, actually, caveat. Naturally, Tier 7, like every other tier in the game, you are playing with a group of 24 random players, and they are put together randomly. The only thing Matchmaker takes into consideration is what class of ship are they playing and what tier is it. That's all it really cares about. Other than that, doesn't look at a player's stats or anything like that. They just tosses a bunch of random people together. So naturally, while I was having less blowout matches, make no mistake, blowout matches were still happening when I was playing through these Tier 7 ships. It just wasn't like every single game like what you get at Tier 8+. It was like, every 2 or 3 games was a blowout game. Other times, hell of a lot closer than what you would find at higher tier, that's for sure. But anyway, so what's going on at Tier 7, and why is it so good, and why might you want to find yourself playing here a lot more? Well, Tier 7 is a bit of an interesting tier for the Matchmaker, especially in recent years. You see, if we go back, 3 years before super ships were added into the game, Tier 7 ships did find themselves getting up to Tier 9 quite a lot. Why? Because, well, Tier 9 ships, they're kind of expensive to run. Even though you do have a good chunk of the player base playing up there, they are expensive to run, and most players will play more often at Tier 8-ish than Tier 9 back in the day. It's probably even more so nowadays because of how sucky Tier 9 matchmaking is. But anyway, so naturally, to fill in the gaps between the Tier 9 and the Tier 8 ships, Matchmaker would look down for a bountiful source of Tier 7 ships for all the players stuck in Tier 7 matchmaking. Grab a couple of them and throw them up to higher tier to fill in those gaps in the matchmaking. So you typically have, a couple of Tier 7 ships and mostly a Tier 8 and a Tier 9 game. That is most definitely far from enjoyable, being, one of maybe 4 ships on between both teams that's Tier 7 and a Tier 9 game. Because the Tier 8s are looking for someone to bully because they know they can't really bully the Tier 9 ships. They might be able to tickle them, and they might be able to punch each other in the face, but can't really bully either of them. They can bully those Tier 7 ships, though, right? And, of course, the Tier 9s see you, and you're for Tier 9 battleships, and if you're in a Tier 7 cruiser, you're literally free damage, right? So you're getting bullied by everybody in that Tier 8 and that Tier 9 game. But then Wargaming, of course, introduced super ships to the mix. And now, Tier 9 ships can get double up tiered to super ship games. And ever since super ships were first introduced, Wargaming has been at a pretty steady clip introducing more and more and more super ships into the game. And now there's players, which is really wild to me, there's players who see super ships not as an additional, kind of bonus little ball ship you can take out every now and then, when you feel like it at the, at the expense of your credits. But that's actually their Tier 10 now. That's their end-all, be-all ship. That's the ship they want to grind to, rather than, getting to the Tier 10 and then just having that, super ship there for a rainy day, right? That's how I usually treat them. I don't take them out often enough because the credit gain is horrendous, right? So you have to slap, at least a blue economic bonus onto it to at least break even in most games, on top of having premium time. So I don't take it out because of that. But anyway, so now you have a ton of players that are playing super ships. You have a whole hell of a lot more super ships now than you had a couple of years ago, which means that Tier 9s are getting sucked up into super ship matchmaking a lot more nowadays. So what does that leave Tier 7 at? Well, Tier 7 ships, they're still getting up tiered, don't get me wrong, but more often than not, in the 3 hours of Tier 7 games I played, again, not partially, in a large part because I was having fun and because I did need footage for the original video planned today. Out of those games, I can count on one hand how many times I got double up tiered into a Tier 9 game. It was 4 matches in 3 hours. That's pretty good. Now take out a Tier 8 and see how long it takes you to get double up tiered to Tier 10. Or take out a Tier 9 and see how long it takes you to get double up tiered to a super ship game on a Friday on patch day week. Won't take too long. But Tier 7, it's a lot better matchmaking. Now, the power gap from Tier 7 to Tier 8 is a hell of a lot more tolerable than obviously Tier 8 to Tier 10 or even Tier 8 to Tier 9. So what you find yourself most cases is that you're actually in that middle group. You're in a Tier 8 game, but there's Tier 6 ships as well. There's a healthy amount of Tier 7s in there, and there's maybe a handful of Tier 8s between both sides. So it's a much more comfortable matchmaking bracket as far as the power is spread out between the ships. Now, I know one thing that I'm sure a couple of you guys are probably typing already in the comments down below. Well, Sealord, that might be true in terms of, getting double up tiered less. But at Tier 6, we've got the possibility for double submarine games and double CV games. Yes, this is true because, submarines start at Tier 6 and, well, you gotta start somewhere, so when everyone's trying out submarines for their very first time, it's in Tier 6 matchmaking, which is, of course, well within your matchmaking bracket as a Tier 7 ship. So yes, double submarine games at Tier 6 are very possible. At Tier 7 are very possible. So are double CV games, and so are double CV games. That is very much possible. But at least for the submarines, you know that, well, that's where a lot of these guys are starting out at. So you probably don't really have a Captain Ramius there to challenge you on their Tier 6 submarine. Keep in mind, too, you're still in a Tier 7 ship, so you're a tier above them, and Tier 6 submarines are quite a ways off from the craziness you see at Tier 8 and Tier 10 with those submarines. So, not really a huge deal a lot of times. Of course, like with any class, you get that one guy that loves playing his Tier 6, his U-69 or whatever, right, or his Salmon, right? He loves playing that, so you're going to run across one of those guys every now and then, but I'm I'd take a submarine game over getting double up tiered, in my honest opinion, because at least the submarine is, if you're tier 7, he's at least below you if it's a double submarine game. Usually tier 8 submarines, well, you're not supposed to get too many double submarine tier 8 games, but it still does happen, right? But I take that over, getting double up tiered to a tier 9 game. If you give me a choice between one or the other, that's what I would do. And of course, too, again, they have less HP and such at tier 6, so you can't just drop a couple of depth charges on them. They kind of skedaddle away. But I was running into that throughout the night, and wasn't a huge deal in my experience. Of course, not all matches will be that lovely. You will run across the one that, knows very well what he's doing and all that jazz. But yeah, I'll take that over getting double up tiered any day of the week, in my humble opinion. So the matches were closer in terms of engagement, just because, of course, the ships, the ranges aren't as crazy as they are at tier 8 and tier 10. They're closer in terms of who's winning and who's losing, and you get much better chances of not getting double up tiered in a tier 7 game. And of course, the matches do just last longer because, well, for one reason, the ships at that tier are, of course, slower and such, so you get a little bit more time to kind of think about what you're doing and such. And I kind of like that those slower paced matches. You're not having those matches that are over in like 5 minutes. And even once you make first contact with the enemy team, the matches were lasting much longer than I was finding tier 10 games. Now, again, of course, you have those matches where, your destroyers just for some reason lose the will to live and they're all dead within the first 5 minutes. It still happens here. I know I said that at the start of the video, but just reiterating it here at the end, it still does happen. But again, it was happening a whole hell of a lot less for me on Friday evening during patch week. And kind of something I needed after the couple of weeks I've had. One of my trucks caught on fire, my daily driver got hit by a bus, the plumbing in the house that I'm at right now decided it was done living, and that's why we didn't have a live stream Friday night. The plumbers were here ripping out the walls and the cement and replacing the pipes, so that's what was going on. After having a couple of weeks like that, having a nice slow 3-hour session of some mid-tier ships was pretty solid in my humble opinion. So if you're having a rough time in World of Warships right now, try dipping on down to tier 7. There's a bunch of wonderful premiums down there as well as some wonderful tech tree ships. Just some really nice, lovely ships at tier 7 too. So check it out, see for yourself, and if you are a connoisseur of mid-tier, let me know in the comments down below. Or if you do check it out for yourself, let me know how that goes for you in the comments down below. Hope you guys have a wonderful Saturday, wonderful rest of your weekend. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.